Lonnie Walker, who is he? What'd he do last night for those out there that aren't NBA fans, Caleb Calhoun?
15 points off the bench in the fourth quarter for the Lakers to help them win game 4 over the Warriors, 104-101. Lakers now have a 3-1 series lead. Not to take a shot, but I have said for years that Steph is one of the most unclutch players in the history of basketball. And I again got validated on that last night. Homeboy went 3 of 14 from 3. If the game is close and you need a 3 from Steph, I'd take LeBron to shoot a 3 in the final 5 seconds before I take Steph Curry if I needed it. I'm not even going to lie to y'all. But Lonnie Walker was the star in the fourth quarter, really taking over. No one saw that coming.
Okay. What you said just then was crazy, but we're not going to talk the NBA.
I like Shaq to shoot a 3 in the fourth quarter over Steph.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right, here we go. So today's tough question is best performance by an unknown Vol. And I'm afraid you're going to pick mine. So I've got a couple, but mine is by far the best. So the one I'm withholding from you is absolutely incredible. And it's brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Andy Mason is my realtor. I'm getting ready to get in that whole scenario of buying. I feel so comfortable knowing I'll save thousands or tens of thousands with Andy Mason. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience in his office. He is awesome. Just sign up. Tell him Off the Hook Sports sent you, but you can sign up at AndyMasonRealEstate.com. So the best performance by an unknown Vol is, what say you, Caleb Calhoun? That's today's tough question. Fill it out on our message board as well. But I've got the winner.
It's from a forgettable game and a forgettable season, but it's 2013 Corey Miller versus Kentucky.
Corey Miller.
Corey Miller had 5 sacks in that game, which remains the most sacks of all time. No one cared about that game because the week before Tennessee had lost to Vanderbilt. It was Butch Jones's first year. By losing to Vanderbilt, they knew they were going to miss out on a bowl game for a 3rd straight year. I mean, this was the darkest period in Tennessee football history, guys. But they played the last game against Kentucky, and Corey Miller registered 5 sacks in the win. That's the best performance by an unknown Vol.
I'm surprised you didn't go my way given your Memphis ties. Is that a hint? You know where I'm going here? Maybe a little before your time. I sometimes forget you're a younger guy than me because I think you know more history than me. So it throws me off. Here's what it is. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, this is absolutely it. It's a 53-yard pass from a known Vol.
Oh, I know this one. Yeah, I know where you're going.
Okay. Which would be T. Martin, okay, to Bobby Graham. It's the only time, I swear to you, the only time that everybody in the Neyland Stadium press box did not know who a guy was. I'm not exaggerating, Caleb. Everybody had to pull out the roster. Nobody knew who Bobby Graham was. He was from Memphis. Tennessee ends up getting the victory because Bobby Graham hauls in a 53-yard pass that was a moon shot, and Memphis was about to pull off one of the most incredible performances in Neyland Stadium by beating Tennessee the year after Tennessee won the national titles. It was a 53-yard shot down to the 6-yard line. 2 plays later, T. Martin found Cedric Wilson, another Memphis native, in the end zone to tie the game. Alex Walls kicks the extra point. Memphis falls to 1-3, and the Vols are able to move on. It was one of those games that we'll talk about coming out flat later in the program on another topic. It was one of those Philip Fulmer games, and to his detriment, he had a lot of those that they would come out flat against Vanderbilt and Kentucky. To his credit, he had established such a talented roster that they would pull those games out. This is one of those prime examples. So I will say Bobby Graham hauling that in. The only time, again, there's been a play made where no one in the media knew who the man was. No exaggeration. Nobody said, oh, that's Bobby Graham. Everybody says, who's that? And we literally all had to look at our rosters to find out who Bobby Graham was.
The funny thing about that Memphis team is that may be the best 5-6 non-Power 5 team of all time. I don't know if you know this, but
if you want to do the research on that.
No, I know the research. I actually remember that year. If you remember when Tennessee played Memphis, they won 17-16. If you remember, Memphis was 1-2 going into that game. You know what their 2 losses were?
I don't.
They lost 3-0 to a 8-4 Ole Miss team that finished in the top 25. And then they lost 13-10 to a Mississippi State team that went 10-2 that year and finished in the top 10. Those were their first 2 losses that year. And then they go and play Tennessee. It was the Rip Scherer era. Rip Scherer was the coach of the Tigers at the time, and they were a dominating defense consistently. They just never had an offense. But going into that game, you kind of could see Tennessee maybe flat because Memphis was very dangerous, and Tennessee had just lost to Florida in a heartbreaker. They had Auburn the next week. I will give you that might have been the greatest play in Tennessee football history. I can't go greatest performance, though. I mean, Bobby Graham didn't even catch the game-winning touchdown.
No, because Tennessee had lost that game if he doesn't make that play. And it wasn't even a great throw. And he was well covered. So I'm going to hold true to what I got.
You do know Bobby Graham. That's not even Bobby Graham's most memorable game.
No, it is too.
No, 2001 Florida, he had 7 catches in that game.
Okay, I don't care. They lose to Memphis the year after winning a national title early in the year, and they lose to Memphis without that play. And don't forget, that's just 3 years after Memphis upset Tennessee. So everybody thought that going into that game that Tennessee would be motivated to pound the Tigers into the ground and prove that they're the better program. And that didn't happen. And it was a game that felt lost by Tennessee. I mean, there are times where you're covering a team and you think to yourself, they have just lost that game. It was an absolute moonshot. For some reason, they couldn't move the ball at all. And if not for that play, you would agree, right? If not for that play, Tennessee loses that game.
Yeah, I agree. What play was more significant to beating Memphis, though? Because here's the crazy part. The very next year, Tennessee almost loses to Memphis again in Memphis. And Memphis is up 17-16 with less than a minute to go. Everybody's certain Memphis has just won the game. And then Leonard Scott reels off a huge return to set up an Alex Walls game-winning field goal.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up Corey Miller and the 5 sacks. Honestly, I'd forgotten that he had 5 sacks, and he was one of the players that was involved in the great escape in the night, so to speak, when Lane Kiffin was gone, because he was a part of that class. And basically the fact that he was a midterm enrollee, but he had gotten to Tennessee and spent the night on campus. And that at the time was a rule. If you spent the night on campus as a midterm enrollee, you don't really sign anything as a midterm enrollee. But if you spend the night on campus, I don't know if that's still the rule, but at the time he spent the night on campus. So he was a Vol and he couldn't get out of it without sitting out a year. This is before the transfer rules, but his teammate, whose name escapes me, his high school teammate, did not make that trip, did not drive with Corey because he was packing up his stuff, got halfway to Tennessee, heard about Lane Kiffin bolting, and turned around and went back the other way. And I think he ended up at Southern California. So Corey Miller was this close to not even having that game and not being a Vol. How strange is that?
That's wild, but then that disproves what we thought about. So Ed Orgeron didn't even know what he was doing when he was calling the players, telling them not to go to class, because it didn't matter if they went to class. It mattered if they spent the night.
Let me tell you something about. You're right, he didn't. Let me tell you something about that.
Of course, Ed Orgeron will get it wrong when he's trying to be shady.
Let me tell you something about that 24-hour period. He didn't know what he was doing. Lane didn't largely know what he was doing. Monty Giffen sure as heck didn't know what he was doing. I remember talking to him. He goes, I don't know why everybody's so upset. I didn't know the rules. No, I mean, it was 24 hours of pure ignorance. I mean, they shouldn't have. They even held a press conference for a departing coach. Mike Hamilton was meeting with a DirecTV guy in Colorado when he got the phone call. So it was all that. Everybody was ignorant, and ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It means uninformed.
And which is why you always turn to Ed Orgeron to be the calming force in those situations.
And he's already in LA making phone calls trying to talk him out of it. It was, yeah. Is what he always used to say. It was ignorance across the board. Nobody was well informed in those 24 hours, and I include myself in that. It was absolutely bizarro. But yeah, Corey Miller was that close to. I think he was going to go to North Carolina instead. He tried to get out of it, but couldn't. Be sure and hit that like button so we can bring more people in. If you haven't subscribed to this point, you need to, and turn your notification on, because Celebrate 98 is a thing and it's happening. We're going to drop it tonight. As a matter of fact, it'll be Eric Westmoreland will be our first guest, and then we'll have more later this week. So yeah, he was that close to not being a Vol at all. Corey Miller was.